Hey everybody, welcome to Less Than Geek. My name is Travis, and today for this video we're going to be covering some of the new rules from the recent FAQ and the changes that it incorporated, and also going over some of the just rules from the tournament rules document that's been around that has not been changed that some players may not be as familiar with. All of this in preparation for attending a regional event, especially if you haven't really played at too many competitive or high-level tournaments. First off, we have the debris cloud tokens are now legal for tournament play. So now, instead of just using asteroids as obstacles, everybody having the same set of 6 tokens, you now bring 3 obstacle tokens, either debris clouds or asteroids of your choice, to the event along with your squad. So some of the rules that are different about the debris tokens, for those who aren't aware of it already, when you fly your ship, the template over the token or land on it, just like an asteroid, you do roll a die to see if you take damage, but you only take damage if you roll a critical hit result instead of a crit or a normal hit. Also, instead of just losing your action, you actually gain a stress token and, of course, cannot perform an action, so that's a little more harsh. They're a little more forgiving if you land on them, because you can still fire if you're sitting on one during the combat phase, unlike an asteroid. And any lines of fire that go through them still add the extra green die to the defender, just like an asteroid. Now, like I mentioned, you're going to be able to bring whichever 3 you want to an event. So this can have an impact on your squad and kind of the strategic choices that you make. Some of them are going to benefit other squads more than others, or some squads more than others. The smaller tokens might be a good choice. You can bring nothing but these, whether you're bringing debris or asteroids. You can bring some combination of the 3 smallest tokens you can find if you want a lot of space to maneuver. This would be good for lists like the dual aggressor IGD8 lists. You've got plenty of room to do the wide bank turns through the asteroids. It's a lot less cluttered. It would also be good for ships like the Interceptor and Soontir Fel. You can boost and barrel roll through there with a lot more room to work with. On the other side of the spectrum, you can bring the biggest obstacles you can find by maybe using a combination of debris and asteroids, something like this. And this would be good if you want to clog up the middle of the field for playing against those types of squads or against swarms. Maybe you have a few individual ships that are just going to kind of fly around loosey-goosey and you're confident in your ability to navigate it. Or you have something like Dash Rendar, who ignores most of the rules and downsides for running over obstacles anyway, and you just want to use as much of this as possible to clutter up the field and use it to screen your opponents. One of the other major rule changes that was in this document is the change to the decloaking rules for the TIE Phantom. So before, you would decloak using the 2 straight maneuver template here, to the right or forward or left, when it was your turn to activate that ship. So say you have some other ships around here that have already performed their maneuver, you could adjust to that. If they went this way thinking you're going to decloak to that side, now you could decloak this way and be right here out of their arc. Now you have to decloak at the beginning of the activation phase, so that your opponent still has to choose their maneuvers and set their dials not knowing where you're going to decloak. But as soon as every ship's dial is set, you then have to commit to one spot by decloaking then. And one thing about this is if your opponent's playing a bunch of ships that themselves don't have the ability to barrel roll or boost or reposition in any way, maybe like some X-Wings or Z95s, it doesn't really change all that much because they still are locked into whatever maneuver they're going to do. They still land there, you're out of arc. They still had to basically guess if you're going to zig or zag. But against a ship that itself has those tricks, like say Soontir Fel, now he still, if he's moving before you, he still doesn't know where your actual maneuver is going to take you, just like any other ship in the game that hasn't moved yet. But you generally have a good idea, especially if there's a bunch of asteroids around or something. There's a lot of situations where there's only that like one or two maneuvers that seems to, put you in a good position. Logical choices there. And, your opponent may not know from here or here where, that maneuver may be good from both of those options, but once he sees which way you went, he's going to know where you're going to end up. And his ability to boost and barrel roll to correct to that now makes him much stronger against the Phantom than he was before. So effectively what this change did is made the Phantom much weaker against some of the other finesse ships, particularly ones that were already at a pilot skill disadvantage against it, such as the IGD-8 Aggressor, and has made life a lot easier for those ships. The Phantom has arguably gotten maybe a little bit better against swarms. It's a little harder to block it. So again, with the old rules, say the Phantom's sitting there, and this is just a swarm of generic low pilot skill ships, TIEs or Z95s or whatever. When your opponent would move, they would probably plan out maneuvers, try to plot stuff like this that would block off your decloaks. And then you would be in a bad position when it came time to activate, and you'd have to decloak, and they would be blocked. Now, since you decloak before that, as long as you go into the round with that spot clear, you'll be safe. It just means that you don't want to end your turn in a position like this in the middle of a swarm. So they can still be a problem, but you kind of know going into the round when you're plotting your maneuver if it's going to be trouble or not. It doesn't surprise you. But overall, the Phantom definitely took a hit, I'd say, in the competitive side of things, since many of the powerful lists right now are those other lists that have their own finesse and movement tricks and match up very well against the Phantom under the new rules. Some other stuff that just kind of pertains to the tournaments in general, like from the tournament document, are now that we're playing a regional event, we're now at the highest tier according to FFG's rules, the competitive tier, which would be regionals or nationals or world tournaments. So this means that some of the rules can be enforced a little more strictly than playing local tournaments or store championships. First and foremost, when you're allowed to measure with your ships. So if you move a ship and then you're doing an action, you can declare that you're attempting to target lock one of your opponent's ships and measure for that. And if you're in range to target lock them, then it's acquired. You can't change your mind. And if you're out of range, then you can choose to do a different action. But otherwise, you can't measure range for any reason other than, unless some ability like Lone Wolf or something triggers, you can check for that. During the combat phase, when it's a ship's turn to fire, you can measure range to every target before you commit to which one you're going to shoot. But outside of that phase, you can't just measure just to check or see what all the ships are going to have on, for range on a given target. You can only measure from the one guy that's about to shoot. Some other things, when you declare, say, a barrel roll or a boost with one of the ships that can do that, you choose a direction where you're going to go. So you'll say Baron here is going to boost to the right. And once that template goes down, you're committed to it as long as you can legally fit there. If there's an asteroid and you're not quite going to fit there, something like that, then you are allowed to choose a different action. You can either choose a different direction or a different action entirely. Again, that's stuff that some people are used to playing that way, but it's probably not enforced all that heavily at most local events. Some other things about the tournaments, to recap on the way they're scored. When you get a full win in a tournament, you get 5 victory points towards your standing in the tournament. You get 3 for a modified win, which means that you have only destroyed 11 or more points that game than your opponent. And you get 1 point for a draw. You each get 1 point, 0 for a loss. Margin of victory is the main tiebreaker used in the tournament standings, followed by strength of schedule used as a secondary tiebreaker that will probably rarely come up because the odds of you having the same margin of victory, even in a big event with someone, is pretty slim. But margin of victory is just calculated based off of how many points you destroy in a match and how many points you have surviving. So if you completely destroy everything your opponent has and all your ships live, you get 200 margin of victory, and they have 0. Every round in the regionals is supposed to be 75 minutes instead of being able to be adjusted to 60 like most local events. So this could impact what squads perform well. The squads that are willing to be patient and take their time and dance around and pick at the enemy will have some extra time to do so. And that could have an impact on what you see at the final tables. The final match, of course, will be untimed, but other than that, it's still 75 minutes. And one last thing about the elimination rounds is, because this is happening more and more with some of the IGD8 lists out there, if you have a draw in an elimination game where you both destroy the same amount of points, sometimes 0, the player with initiative actually gets to advance. So that's something else to think about when deciding who has initiative in those elimination rounds. But yeah, that's basically everything we wanted to cover for that. We're going to do some videos about specific squads and some of their strengths and weaknesses with the different matchups of what else is out in the field. And we'll have those coming up next on the Less Than Geek channel. So give us a like and a subscribe.